You're listening to Business Talk Radio, where we take business to the next level.
Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn connects you with experts from all over the world to help you take charge of your career, your business, and your life. Rap along with us. Visit drjacalyn.com to learn how to become a guest or a sponsor. And now, the doctor is in.
I just love that music. It's a Friday, and it's a great time to have someone share a lesson to help make us better personally or professionally. Welcome and hello. You are watching USA Global TV or listening on Business Talk Radio. I'm Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, and we've got a great show for you today. You're watching A Better You, lessons from the best coaches, consultants, and trusted advisors. I have hand-selected a team of people from around the world who come and join us on our 7 shows each week to share their expertise, their knowledge to help make us better personally or professionally. My guest today is expert presenter Red O'Loughlin, joining us from the great state of Texas. Hello, Red. How are you?
Excellent as always, Dr. Jacalyn.
I know that about you. I know you are always in a great mood. You have a positive attitude, and you get stuff done, and I love that.
My mentor a long time ago, Myron Golden, he would always answer, excellent as always. And at that point in time, I was saying something along the lines of somewhat reasonable, if somebody asked me that question. That was my standard tagline. And he says that you have to reflect what you really are. And so I started adopting that. And ironically, it took me about 30 days where I could say it without even thinking. Somebody said, how are you? Well, excellent as always. But I noticed that over time, I would say it and I would actually feel it. And then those 1 or 2, possibly 3 days a year that you just weren't 100%. And somebody would say, how are you doing? And I'd say, excellent as always, without even thinking. It was a kind of a rote. And then all of a sudden, I could 2-3 minutes later, I actually felt better. And I said, well, so the next time that happened, I paid closer, and it happened again. And so I noticed that when I say that, I actually do feel better because it's kind of a affirmation to myself. And excellent as always, and depending on what's going on around us. And some days I'm actually much better than that. But I feel my bar is excellent, and it's always there. And occasionally I'm way up here, but I'm never below that. And it's it's like Yogi Berra used to say, it's 90% physical and the other half is mental. Your mental and your physical kind of go together, and you just keep them tied together. I can't honestly tell you. I mean, even through COVID and everything else, I can't tell you last time I actually was sick or even had a bad day. They don't happen. Or if they do, I just ignore them and go on. But I honestly can't tell you the last time I really, really felt bad. Probably about 2004 I had a gallbladder issue. And that's the last time I really remember having any serious issues. But that's about it. I mean, it's just stay up mentally and physically.
Well, I can share with our audience that you and I meet usually weekly, and I always look forward to it because I know you're in a great mood. You're always going to be in a great mood. Every time I meet with you, sometimes you meet with people and it's like, oh, this is wrong, that's wrong, and you're just kind of like dreading having the conversation or the meeting. But I know when I meet with you, all positive energy. So thank you for that.
I appreciate that very much, Doctor.
What will you be sharing with us today for your lesson part 3?
My part 3 lesson today is on Alzheimer's. I've been doing some research on it for quite a while. I'll go into this as I get my actual presentation going. But when you ask Dr. Google what causes Alzheimer's, they're going to tell you beta amyloid or tau tangles, and that's about it. But if you go into it at the very, very beginning, there are other things, and today I'm going to talk about chemical imbalance in the brain, and I'll allude a little bit to inflammation and oxidative stress that I've already talked about. But there's a few other things that we'll talk about here in future sessions. I know there's at least another 2 parts to this, possibly 3. It seems like every time I turn around, I read this article or I go, oh, wow, that's interesting. And so I start diving into that one and find out, hey, there's a link there between this and that. And so let me go research it further. Basically, I'm a researcher. I love doing it. And that's what I do most of the time. I write every day. I haven't missed a day now in writing and publishing, posting something on my website or social media. almost 600 days, I believe. I got over 850 original content articles on LinkedIn. So there's a lot of information I put out there. I think I got about 1,300 or so blogs on my website. But this is what people say, what makes you happy? What do you do? Well, I love to research. I love to write. I love to do a lot of things, garden, cook. But when I'm in my office, which is almost all day long, that is what I do. I just get in there and I read articles. Can I share this with my audience? Would they get some value out of it? That's kind of my niche. Is that if there's something there that I think information, awareness, education is of value to my readers, my audience, that's what I dive into. And I try to take something that's really complex and then write it such that it's easily understandable. That's what I do, and that makes me happy.
Well, and what you're doing makes other people happy as well. And I just want our audience on Business Talk Radio to know that you're looking quite dapper, and you have on a jacket and a pin. I'd love to have you share with us what it's all about.
Earlier today, I had a military luncheon. We have a group that gets together once a month. And so I go there, get the right side here. These are my Naval Flight Officer wings. I was in the Navy for 31 years. I flew for 16 of them. P3s, I have almost 1,000 flights in P3s, if I can get this quarter in the back of me. And so when I go to military events, I try to wear something that's indicative of what I am, an aviator, naval aviator. 31 years in the Navy. I was a Navy captain. You hear the term, join the Navy, see the world. Well, I got to see 61 countries in the world as part of my Navy experience. I did get an invitation to Vietnam at the beginning. I did get an invitation to Bosnia at the end. I did about 4.5 years on active duty. Then I joined the reserves for about 20 years. And then the Berlin Wall fell, things kind of aligned. And then all of a sudden I went back on active duty again for about 6.5 years. And then it was time to say adios. And I retired in 1999 with about 31 years. It's interesting because I said I do to the Navy on a Sunday afternoon. I was up in Dallas, Texas with my best friend. He flunked the physical. He never got in the Navy. He was 4F. I passed. I got that weekend. I signed up. The following Wednesday, I said I do to my wife. So I have 31 years with the Navy. I have 53 years this year with my wife.
Aw, love that story. Thank you for your service. That is truly amazing. Do you miss it?
There are some days I do, and there are some days I don't, because we tend to block out those things that are unpleasant. I go on a weekend for the reserves, and you may be wearing a uniform for 30 or maybe up to 40 hours, especially when I fly and we're flying to Europe for a weekend or to Hawaii or someplace. We're flying someplace a long ways away. Sometimes we start on a Thursday night, pick up everybody in my flight crew, and then we're off to the Azores or who knows where to do some kind of operational mission. Otherwise, maybe you're flying, you're in line waiting for the air pickup, or sometimes I'm driving, or I live in Houston and I was drilling out in New Orleans. And so that's a 7-hour drive both ways. And so when you get done, you put in 30, 35, 40-hour weekend, and then you're back to work again. And I was doing 3 weekends a month for about 16 years. And so you get 1 weekend off a month for family. And that was kind of the highlight of everything. So when you look at the really good deals, probably one of the best deals I ever had was flying out of California to Hawaii, picking up a whole bunch of meteorologists, and then we flew down to Tahiti. And we were dropping sonobuoys to measure the water depth, the water temperature at depth from 10 degrees north of the equator to 10 degrees south of the equator. And we were dropping these bathythermograph sonobuoys every 30 miles. We were the very first flight. We get into Papeete, Tahiti, and we had 4 days that we had just for fun. The first thing I did was go to Bora Bora. I came back to load sonobuoys for the next day's flight, and then I jumped on another airplane, went right straight back over to Moorea. And I got back just in time to leave. But there are lots of good memories there. I share them periodically on my website. But most of the time, it's just you got to do what you got to do because that's your job. As an aviator, you love flying, but you still, in the Navy, you have a ground job that I may be admin officer, I may be something else, and that takes up the majority of your time. And it's not doldrums, but it's not exciting. It can be at times, but most of the time it's just like any other job you have. But those little bitty perks, jumping in an airplane, flying to Spain for a weekend. You fly an operational mission on Saturday, you come back on Sunday. Yeah, it's a lot of time, a lot of effort. But when you find the bad guys and you do what you need to do and you come back and you feel pretty good about it. We had one mission where one of my crewmen wanted to be re-enlisted in the Navy over a Russian submarine. So we set up a mission where we were going to fly to Bermuda. No expense to the government. Everybody's paying out of their pocket. We were not taking any. We took our own sonobuoys. We got a mission. We got there, and they said, "We want you to find this guy that he hasn't been out here in a while." And that's not the mission we wanted. We wanted something that was pretty easy to do, and we were using our own sonobuoys, which didn't have good reliability. Long story short, I dropped a buoy, nothing. Dropped the next buoy, nothing. Dropped the next buoy. And by now, I'm dropping the fourth on my way to the fifth because we're driving them from 20,000 feet. And it takes a while to get to the ocean and then to come up. Ironically, the third buoy came up and the submarine was within 2 miles of that buoy. We went back and did everything we had. We did a number of simulated attacks. And on the second mark on top of the submarine, simulating a torpedo away, the plane commander read the re-enlistment over the PA system, and he was re-enlisted on top of a Soviet submarine out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, unbeknownst to anybody else because we didn't tell the world that what we were doing. And so that's kind of one of those little missions. We had an 8-hour mission to fly. I decided after 6 hours, that was it, no more. We're just going to go home. So we went back, came in early, got 100% on everything that we did, and went out in town, had a good time, flew back to New Orleans the next day, and then flew back into Texas that evening. So lots of little stories like that. I could go on and on and on for various things we've done over time. And I'm sure any other veteran, especially aviators, probably have similar stories because that's part of the life that we lived way back when.
It sounds very exciting if you compare it to sitting on the sofa and watching Netflix. So it sounds like, yes, it sounds like you've done a lot of really amazing things. So it's a pleasure to know you. And again, thank you for your service.
I appreciate it very, very much, Dr. Jacalyn. I do. Thank you.
Well, this show is all about you. So now it's time for you to do your lesson, unless you want me to go to commercial break. Your choice.
Why don't you do a commercial break, because we've been talking now about 12 minutes. I think that's probably appropriate for your show.
Thank you, sir. Yes, you are right. We'll give the audience a little reprieve. We'll be right back. Stay with us here. Red O'Loughlin is coming up with his part 3 about Alzheimer's.
Hi, my name is Zane Carson Caruth, and I'm the author of this book, The World's First Tooth Fairy Ever.
Reading is magic. Studies have shown that reading to your children lays the foundation for greater success in life. Reading helps develop language and vocabulary skills. It helps improve memory, and it encourages curiosity and inspires creativity. The benefits are immeasurable, and as a parent, you'll benefit too. In only 10 or 15 minutes a day, you'll be creating more memories and a bonding experience that will last for years to come. So take time to read to your children. Read them books about things that engage and interest them. Tales of fairies and magic fascinate children, and as everyone knows, the Tooth Fairy is at the top of the list. If your child loves magic, wands, adventure, and what child doesn't, you'll love reading them books from the trademarked series, The World's First Tooth Fairy Ever. Follow along as Bella, the world's first tooth fairy, accidentally starts the Tooth Fairy tradition. Learn the tricks of being a professional tooth fairy in the book, A Bella Starts a Tooth Fairy School. Your child's imagination will soar as you read the adventures of Abella and her magic wand. These wonderful books are available at worldsfirsttoothfairy.com and at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Walmart.
Ladies and gentlemen, here it is, the most listened to radio show on the planet. Even the other stations are tuned in too.
You're listening to Business Talk Radio, where we take business to the next level.
Welcome back to USA Global TV and Business Talk Radio. You're watching A Better You. Lessons from the best coaches, consultants, and trusted advisors. In our next segment, Red O'Loughlin is going to do his third part of his series on Alzheimer's disease, which is so important. So many people are being diagnosed with this. Many people are not diagnosed with it, but have some of the symptoms. So I'm really looking forward to this next part, Red.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Jacalyn. I appreciate it. So,
all right. Would you like the timer?
Yes. Please. I would. Just kind of keeps me honest, and so I appreciate it.
All right. Here you go. Have a great lesson.
I shall do my best. Hi, Red O'Loughlin here. First, a disclaimer. I'm not a medical doctor. Never been in the medical field. Haven't worked in the pharmacy field. I have nothing to do with that industry. I'm a researcher. I research what goes on in the human body at the cellular level. Biochemically speaking, I look for cause and effect relationships. Treat a cause, fix a problem. Treat a symptom, and you'll always treat symptoms. I ask people typically in some of my audiences, do you remember your first love? Well, my first love was chemistry. I never got a chance to practice it because I got an invitation to Vietnam. But nowadays I have 6 Saturdays and a Sunday every week, and I do what I enjoy doing. And one of those is researching. And so I take my time and I go in and I'll look and find out what's there. I've written 5 books, mostly in health and wellness, but 2 in the area of longevity, which is my niche. One of them is Longevity Secrets for Healthy Aging, how to live to 100 years of age with the body of a healthy 50-year-old and the mind of a 25-year-old. And then my Joy of Ageless Health, how to be healthy, vibrant, and active as you age. And I go into the causes of aging, and basically 2, but there's a few others, but a lot of factors associated with it. And the things that I'm talking about today, I have a section in my Longevity Secrets on the brain and brain health, and I'll probably be writing, I'm almost positive I'll be writing a book on Alzheimer's. It just seems like there's so much information out there. Now, I'm not telling you Alzheimer's from a doctor's perspective. That's a different animal entirely. I'm telling you from a researcher's perspective. So if I look at that, the information I'm providing you basically is a good opportunity for you to say, hey, doctor, what about this? And then you can have a conversation with somebody who can help you more than I can. But Alzheimer's, we've all seen it. It's a progressive disease, destroys memory, destroys a lot of lives just besides the one who has it. The brain cell connections degenerate and die. Memory loss, confusion, symptoms vary. But basically, we have a decline and impairment in our judgment. And they say there's no cure. I think you can probably arrest and slow it down for a while. And at that point in time, you have some level of enjoyment, better quality of life. But if you ask Dr. Google what causes Alzheimer's, he's going to tell you. It's going to be an abnormal buildup of plaque from amyloid beta and some tangles from the tau protein. And that's basically it. But if you go in and you say, Dr. Google, what about oxidative stress and Alzheimer's? Oh, there's a whole lot of information there. Or what about inflammation? Or what about excitotoxicity and Alzheimer's? And you find a wealth of information. It's amazing how much is there, but it's not pulled in to the basic question. So you've got to do your research. And I've already spoken on Dr. Jacalyn's show about inflammation. That was part 1. Oxidative stress, part 2. Today we're talking about chemical imbalance, part 3. I'll be talking about the beta amyloid or amyloid beta that goes back and forth in the literature. And I'll also be talking about tau tangles and excitotoxicity, and maybe something else if it pops up, but at least 6 segments on this topic. Every single one of these are written up as blogs. I haven't written this one up for today, but after I get done with the Dr. Jacalyn show, this will probably be my blog for tonight. I spend about 90 minutes a day researching and writing a blog and posting it on my website. So if you get a chance later on and you're not you're not taking notes, go to rattleoffland.com and you'll be able to find it. Chemical balance. I've mentioned this story to Dr. Jacalyn before in a couple other segments, but there's a doctor, Dr. Terry Wall, W-A-H-L-S, Walls, and she wrote a book called The Walls Protocol. Very late in life, I believe she's an internist, she came down with multiple sclerosis. And no matter what the doctors did, it got worse and worse. She's finally in a wheelchair. And she did some research on autoimmune disease, of which multiple sclerosis is one of them. And so she wrote a book and she put herself on her own protocol, the Walls Protocol. And in 3 months, she was able to walk using a walker, and she hadn't been out of a wheelchair in 4 years. A month later, she was walking using a cane. By the end of the year, she's bicycling, I think, 18 miles. If she walked in the door right now, you'd never know she ever had MS. And my wife was going through chemo at that time for breast cancer. And I had read her book and I said, you know, if somebody can just change their diet and a couple other things, the diet, toxin removal, exercise, and stress management, I think are the 4 keys in her book. Let's try that. So between chemo and radiation, I got what I needed. And on first day of radiation, we started her Walls protocol. And the radiologist said her fatigue was probably going to get worse. That was the only thing I could not treat well enough to make a difference in. She was taking 1 or 2 2-hour naps a day. Didn't make any difference. Anyway, 48 hours later, fatigue was gone. The last day of radiation, weeks later, we got in the car and drove to Jacksonville, Florida from Houston. That's about 1,000 miles. I rented a U-Haul, loaded all my parents' estate stuff up that we wanted to keep, drove back. She followed me 500 miles each day by herself, 48 hours after her last radiation treatment. Within a week, she was volunteering back up at the church. This is all right after radiation, weeks of it, months of chemotherapy. And I'm thinking to myself, why? And it turns out it's called balanced nutrition. The body needs over 30 nutrients a day to be balanced. If you're not getting those nutrients through the food you eat or the supplements you're taking, something's wrong. So now, why not apply that same thing? If we're not getting enough nutrients that we need every day, we're going to see problems with our hearts, problems with our gut, problems with our brain. And so one of the things that happens in the brain is a chemical balance. When everything is working fine, it is just going so nicely. We talk about chemical imbalance, and I'm applying this to the brain specifically because I'm going to talk more about this, the chemical aspects of imbalance when I get into the excitotoxicity lecture. But when everything is working well, we have just the right amount of neurotransmitters. But if we get too many or too few, now we have a problem. And typically when we're looking at neurotransmitters, we're looking at dopamine and serotonin and norepinephrine. But today I'm going to talk about acetylcholine. Now, there's reasons why we end up with a little bit of imbalance, and they go back and forth. But as we age, there's a certain thing that happens. Things are no longer in control. They're not made with the same frequency they used to be. You know, one of the big ones is one of the phospholipids, phosphatidylserine, and I'll talk about that as one of the ones down the road. But our body makes it, but we're not making enough, and it affects the brain. But disease, injury, stress. Oh, stress is a big one. And nutrition. Take something simple like vitamin B12. Vitamin B12 is a cobalamin. A deficiency for a long period of time in B12 mimics Alzheimer's, no doubt about it. That's one of the reasons why gerontologists give a B12 shot to an Alzheimer's patient to see if they're deficient in B12 or not. And if it works, great, they have it under control. Sugar is another one, type 3 diabetes. Sugar has a major problem with impairment in the brain and cognitive skills and self-control. It stimulates the cravings, the reward center. But my topic today is acetylcholine. It is the primary neurotransmitter in the brain. It's a neurotransmitter and a neuromodulator. It deals with memory and learning, motivation, attention, arousal. It's used to promote our sleep, our REM sleep. And occasionally, not often, but occasionally we're going to see an imbalance there. And what happens is that there's an enzyme, acetylcholinesterase. and it hydrolyzes the acetylcholine into choline and acetic acid. And when that happens, you're losing neurotransmitters. Now all of a sudden, learning becomes an issue, memory becomes an issue. You allow other things that were possibly under control to get to the edge and to go out of control. And so these issues of memory impairment, brain disorders, maybe dementia, maybe Alzheimer's, are directly linked to that acetylcholine. And so when we want to get that back into control, well, there's two things we can do. We can stop what's going on with the acetylcholinesterase. So you look up what impairs, what inhibits, what stops it from happening. And we find out that there's some drugs out there, Aricept, Cognex, Exelon, Donepezil, whatever. Anyway, there's a number of drugs that go in there, and all it does in that drug is it counters that particular enzyme that shuts down or hydrolyzes the acetylcholine. But it doesn't add more acetylcholine to the body. It just stops that particular one. But those are drugs. All drugs have side effects. But you do have other things out there, ginkgo biloba, bacopa monterey, huperzine A, things we've probably never heard of. Many people heard of ginkgo biloba. But those things are natural inhibitors of the acetylcholinesterase, and they work very well. One supplement that works probably better than anything else is called alpha-glycerol phosphorylcholine, I believe. And that one is available as a supplement, and it does a pretty decent job. But beef liver, egg yolks, soybeans, fish, seafood, shiitake, mushrooms, all of those things have choline in them. And when you have that extra choline, now the body has a source to draw on, where it's just shutting it down with a prescription drug and saying, okay, let me stop what's attacking the brain. But how about just building some more stuff up? My focus is not on the drugs. I'm aware of a few of them. Somebody will come to me and say, what about this one? So I have no idea. I've never researched it, don't know anything about it. My brother-in-law had Alzheimer's pretty badly. He was a Catholic priest. He died about a year and a half ago, I think, 2 years ago. And in his parish, he just got to a point where he could no longer say mass on a daily basis or do the other things as the pastor of his church. One of my wife's youngest brother brought him down, took care of him. Well, we suggested they put him on phosphatidylserine, which I mentioned earlier is a phospholipid the body makes 4 of them. And he couldn't even tell you what year it was. He had no concept of that. Within 30 days, he could tell you what he had for dinner last night, what he had for breakfast, what was on TV tonight, what was on TV. I mean, just magic with one thing, phosphatidylserine. Now, there's phosphatidylcholine also, and I'll be talking about that in one of the future lectures. But the choline is a big one, but there are things that can slow down the progression of the disease. But if you really want to do something, you need to do something early. You can't wait until you're 75 and starting to have okay, where'd the keys go? Where'd the car go? Those are things you need to kind of figure out. If you take care of yourself younger, you're probably going to have less problems down the road. And so from that perspective, I provide a lot of information. My blogs are full of it, but the whole thing is that it gives you information, not to make changes right now. No, I'm not suggesting that, but I give you information to talk to your doctor about. You have something that say, hey, what about this, doctor? Can I take this? It's up to him to make that decision for you because he is your medical professional. All I do is provide ammunition for you to load the gun to go in there and shoot. Hey, doctor, what about this one? Okay. And so if you can go in there with an intelligent question and some backup material, print my blog, whatever you need to do. I like to leave a lot of links so that when I'm talking about something, somebody wants to know more, they click that link, they go right to the same source that I used or a source similar to the one I used. And so it makes it very, very easy when taking that information. So from that perspective, I'm going to call number 3 done, and I'm going to head back to Dr. Jacalyn and take it from there, Dr. Jacalyn.
Thank you so much. I don't know why that always changes the formats. Great lesson. I was back there really paying attention. And I love the fact that you provide the disclaimer. You're not a doctor. You're not a physician. You're not somebody in the pharmaceutical industry, but you are a researcher. And this is really near and dear to you. And when you talked about how much time you take to put together your blog, I think you said 90 minutes.
On the average, it's about an hour and a half a day. Some days a little longer, some days a little shorter. Rarely under an hour. I have no idea what I'm going to write about any day. When my fingers touch the keypad, then I start looking. I'll go to health headlines today and I'll look at a half a dozen or more sites. If I find something exciting, something that excites me, I'm going to do a much better job than, okay, let me just pick this one. But a lot of times there's things out there and people say, what about like CBD oil? I can't tell you how many people ask me. I have no interest in it, so therefore I don't write about it. But at some point in time, I might. It's in the back of my mind, but just it's not something that does anything for me. But if it's something there that I enjoy getting information out of, I'm going to share it with everybody in the world.
Well, thank you so much. You've actually inspired me. Starting on Sunday when I start my 75 hard challenge, I'm going to be blogging for 75 days, and I'm not really sure what to include. So when you do your blogs, what do you follow a certain format each time you write that you want to make sure you share, like tell the audience what you're going to tell them, then tell them, and then what you told them, or are you just free flow?
No, actually, I do several things. It's I pick the topic, whatever it happens to be. Let's say I'm going to write tonight on part 3, which I am going to do. And the first thing I need to do is to come up with a title. And so I'll put a title down there and I'll go to a headline title analyzer. And if I get a high enough score on that particular title, I'll accept it. If not, then I change words around or I change the whole title. But I want to make sure I have a title that rates at least a 60, 65, nothing less than a 60. Sometimes I'm in the 80s, but I like something close to 70 or in the 70s, but I want a headline that's compelling, something that people, I want to read that. So that's the first thing when I write a blog.
So headline analyzer, do tell, what is this?
Google headline analyzer. Dr. Google will tell you all about it and give you examples. I use one, and when I go to that particular headline analyzer, let me see if I have it here on this particular machine. I do not. I don't know why I don't have it on the. I have it on my. I got 2 machines upstairs, but anyway, a headline analyzer. You take and copy and you paste it into the headline analyzer, and it analyzes it for several different factors, and it will come back with the quantitative number. It'll say 41. Well, you change things around, you reanalyze. Okay, now you're up to 51. Change a couple more. You're now up to 61. So it tells you the emotional and several other. It gives you several quantitative assessments of the words and the order in which you put them in. And that's, to me, the number one. Once I have it, I mean, I know what I'm going to write about, but that gives me, that's the basis. That's the promise that I need to deliver in the rest of the blog. So if I'm saying 5 reasons why, whatever the, then when I get down to my conclusion, I want to make sure that I covered at least 5 or more, because that was the promise that I gave in the title. I usually start out then with 1 or 2. And if I can relate a personal observation in the middle of that, then I do that, because that kind of, I'm sharing myself with everyone else. And so as I'm taking my story, okay, why did this one interest me in some cases? Or maybe it happens to be a headline du jour. COVID happens to be, I've written 275 or more COVID articles over the last 18 months. But there's things out there that you need to share. So I have my little entry paragraph, and then I go into, maybe it's, what is Alzheimer's? So I give a little definition and a link so people can go, and I'll do 1 or 2 paragraphs short. I try to keep it no more than 4 sentences. And so there's a brief thing, and then I go into the next one. Okay, what is the cause of this? Okay, I go into that with the link. Then I go into, well, what can you do about it? How do you stop it? Okay, then I can go into natural inhibitors or whatever it may, and I go to the next one. Well, how can I improve whatever I have? And then so I have at least 3 sections minimum, each one with a link, because a link is the backlink, and that gives your credibility to what you're talking about. But it also gives the website credibility, because you're going to Mayo Clinic or to Cleveland Clinic or to Harvard or wherever the links go to. That's the links that are coming back to your website. So it gives you credibility with regard to SEO and a few other things. And then I always have a conclusion. That conclusion is my assessment or summary of what is there. Maybe some things I purposely left out because I wanted to bring them into the summary to say, this is what really happened and my opinion about it. And not always. Now, there may be occasions where I'm writing something where I'm just going to have a single thought up here with a link, and then maybe not even a conclusion, because it's a story I want to share about something. But most of the time, I'll have the 3 primary key titles, sometimes more, and 3 links, one with each one. And depending on what it is, there may be a need for a link within a subtitle. And when I get to my conclusion, it's rarely under 500, it's rarely over 1,000. But there may be a day when it might be 345. There may be a day when it's 1345. But I spend about an hour and a half. And then the other thing I do that I always ensure, I always have a photograph. I try to Pixabay is where I go most of the time, but I try to get a photograph of something that relates to what I wrote about. So now I have a compelling headline. I have a photograph that has some link to what we're talking about. And then I have the article with the links, and then I share it. First place I put is my website. Then I put it on LinkedIn. Then I put it on social media, and then I go to some other places. But those are what I do, and it takes. My wife is my last. She's my proofreader. After I go through the spell check, I do Grammarly. I do everything I need to do myself. Then she's the last person that goes through and says, "I didn't understand the sentence. What are you saying?" Okay, then I'll go back and rewrite that sentence, because if she doesn't understand it, then I know that other people are going to have a problem too. So she's my final person that looks at everything. And so when it gets out, it should be fairly well put together. Shouldn't be any real errors in it. Sometimes those things get through. I'll go back, a year ago, I wrote that. I can't believe that thing got through there. But those things do happen. And that's what I do on a daily basis. And then I do my other research just as part of just, I do a lot of reading, and a lot of it's in the field of health and wellness. And all of a sudden, I read an article yesterday on lithium deficiency and how it affects the brain and what causes. Okay, that sounds like something I need to write about. Definitely something I need to put in my Alzheimer's portion of this thing, and it'll happen.
Oh my gosh, Red, this is a lesson within a lesson within a lesson. We just got like 3 lessons today from you. Thank you. What was the name of the website with the images?
Pixabay, Pixabay, Pixabay. Pix like Pix, Pix, eBay.
eBay. Thank you so much.
Now,
so for
a lot of places you go and they have photos, but they want to charge you for them. Pixabay is one of the has free photos. So I think the top line on most of them are Shutterbug or something. So make sure you're in the section that's free photos, and you go down and they got hundreds or thousands of photos depending on what you want. So if you put in Alzheimer's, you're going to get pictures of something dealing with Alzheimer's, but sometimes that's not what you want. Sometimes you want a related. Maybe you talked about, yesterday I talked about leg muscles and the ability of that to get blood to the brain. So I'm talking about a brain dementia, but I'm talking about leg muscles, the calves, it being stronger, and a couple exercises you can do in order to get that blood back up into the brain to offset some of that dementia. And I separate dementia from Alzheimer's, so it wasn't one of the ones, but still the same. I'm really talking about, I describe a little bit about the dementia and the systolic blood pressure, and what's happening when you have very, very low diastolic blood pressure. Because when you're young, you don't want to have a high blood pressure, but when you get older, after 60, you want to have a little bit higher blood pressure because it keeps that blood going to the brain. But if you have low blood pressure, and how low is low? Anything under the bottom number being under 65, now you do have a problem. But one of the things you can do is your leg muscles pump that blood back up. And so I put some pictures of people's leg muscles climbing or whatever else. So I try to vary it, not with the same pictures all the time, but something in the article that links to it.
You put a lot of thought into it. Of course. Why wouldn't you? That's who you are.
I'm a writer. I write every day. It's just, if you're a writer, I think you should write every day. Yeah, you can take that time off, but you ought to be writing at least 4, 5, 6 times a week.
Well, that's what I'm going to start doing, and I will be thinking of you, and I wish that you were taking this challenge for me, because you would fly through it.
It wouldn't be a challenge. I've done almost 600 days in a row now.
It's incredible. Incredible. Well, thank you so much for being here and sharing so much incredible content with us. For those of you just joining, I see some people just joined, please go over to our YouTube channel, USA Global TV, and you can watch the beginning of this show, because Red just shared at least 3 lessons for us today. So I appreciate it. If you're interested in writing or blogging, he gave some real gems as well. So thank you, Red. What's the best way for people to reach you, and who should reach out to you?
Okay. I'm old fashioned. Call me on the phone, 281-687-1188. 281-687-1188. 1188. I answer the phone just about all the time. If I'm not there, I'm tied up. I send a little message saying, I can't talk right now, but I'll get right back to you. Leave me a message. Email is another good way to reach me. Red, R-E-D, O'Laughlin, no dot, red.o'laughlin at gmail.com. My website is redolaughlin.com without a period between the red and the O'Laughlin, but red.o'laughlin at gmail.com. That's red, R-E-D, O'Laughlin, OLAUGHLIN.com. And primarily I speak like we're doing today. I'm available for that all the time. I spoke earlier this week to a Chamber of Commerce meeting, ironically, on 6 causes of Alzheimer's and what you could do about it. But I also publish books. I've been working with a number of different people over the years. I've got about 20 authors published. So if you think you want to have a book, give me a buzz. We'll talk about it. I'd love to. I'm a kind of a one-stop shop on answering questions about writing and publishing. I don't do a lot of them, but I know people who can edit your book and get you websites, can do press releases. But what I do is I publish books. And if you have any inkling at all that you think a book might help your credibility, or you have difficulty struggling to get your story out, a book is one good way to do it. And it's the new business card. So it's one of those things to consider. But anyway, back to you, Dr. Jacalyn.
Thank you. And Mr. Red O'Laughlin helped me get my first book published and on the bestseller list in less than 2 weeks. And we are currently working on the second and third book. The second book is pretty much finished. We'll be releasing them in the spring. So he knows what he's doing. He's got a great process. He's very diligent, follows up, and he will get you thinking in ways that you weren't thinking before. So I highly recommend Red O'Laughlin. Please do reach out to him, red.o'laughlin at gmail.com.
Do you have a copy of the cover of your book available real quickly?
I do. I don't know if my cord is going to stretch for it. Let me see. I do. Can you see it?
With the green screen in the background. No, but do you have an image you could pop up? Because
I do.
It's not doing you have too much green screen in the background to have that. There you go.
There it is. It's so funny. I hardly ever talk about my book, which is a mistake because usually people are talking about it. But this book is all about my personal journey of how and why I left the corporate world. And people might be surprised to find out what the reasons are, and how I started this live broadcasting business with no experience in 5 months during a pandemic. So it's available on Amazon as an ebook and also as a paperback book.
Now, one of the things that we talked about, I think I did a show way back when talking about how to write and publish your book for free. And we went through a couple of things, and Dr. Jacalyn says, hey, I'd like to talk to you more. And so we started out, and we started using a process that I have that I talked about. And in about 4 weeks, the book was done. However, instead of just talking about why you quit the corporate world, kind of like a memoir of sorts, you decided you want to make it a how-to book. How can other people do the same thing you did? And so we spent another 3, maybe 4 weeks, probably 4 weeks, rewriting the book, including stuff that wasn't in there. And then voila, the book was done in probably from start to finish, from creation to end, a little over 8 weeks, maybe 9 weeks. Published it a week later, ebook less than a week later, you're #1 best-selling author. So it's one of those things. I don't normally get involved to that level, helping my clients. I did one other book very similar to that. The guy got his book Wednesday of this week. It was about a 6-month honeymoon he took back in 1964. We started out with 800 pages, got it down to 466 with 120 photographs. But most of the things I do, I just publish, but I get people moving in the right direction, and I got a lot of references to help them.
Absolutely. And I think also something else that you do is that, especially for new authors, you can tell yourself you're going to follow a schedule and a process, and then this comes up and then that comes up, and before you know it, you're derailed and the book is over here on the side. You're not doing anything. And by meeting with Red, he really keeps you on point. You both have deliverables to do, and I think it's a great process, and that's why we're doing the second and third one, and we're looking for maybe a series of 12. So please do contact Mr. Red O'Laughlin.
Maybe even a baker's dozen, huh?
Exactly. Give or take. All right, Red, thank you so much. My next show is just about to begin. So I really appreciate you being here on a Friday, and I wish you a beautiful and blessed weekend.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jacalyn. As always, I enjoy it. Just love it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I had a great time as well. Bye-bye. Our last show of the day is coming up, and it's presenting Pet Psychic Amina, and our guest is the Reverend Dottie Boone. We're welcoming her back, so please do join us. We'll be back in less than 15 minutes. Stay here for our next show. Bye, Red.